Today I'm interviewing Aida Ponti de Castello, who works at the European Trade Union Institute. Very nice talking to you. Can you briefly introduce yourself and the work you're doing?
Yes, thank you very much for the kind invitation. So I work in Belgium, where the European Trade Union Institute is located. I'm a senior researcher. I'm a lawyer by training, but I also studied bioethics. So I have a mixed background in science and technologies. And there at the ETUI, I am responsible for conducting research. And my area of specialization is this cross-boundary field between science, technology, law, ethical and social aspects.
So in your opinion, does the wider use of AI system, does it pose some implication on workers' rights?
Of course, AI systems have always posed implications to or implications and questions to workers' rights for many reasons and in many different dimensions. Because they are there, because they're modifying in a way the work environment, because they are also can modify and impact their working conditions, the way they work, how they work, and how they develop their skills, knowledge, experience, tacit knowledge. And of course, some labor rights, social rights can also be impacted like that we are seeing today.
So moving on a little and to talk about the EU's AI Act. So in your opinion, what is the most beneficial aspects of the EU AI Act, or what we know of it until now?
Well, there are many beneficial things. We have an AI Act, which is absolutely fantastic. It has been a really long journey that I have been observing since the beginning. And the benefit is that we will have a legal framework for Europe that will also impact the rest of the world, because it has this extraterritorial effect on other providers of AI systems in the EU. And I think that it also will be beneficial because it interlinks between other pieces of legislation, particularly liability legislation, the GDPR, the General Data Protection legislation, machinery legislation, and of course social and labor legislation. So everything will be somehow interconnected thanks to the AI Act.
Are there some aspects of the law that concerns you?
Yes, there are aspects of the AI Act that are of concern. First of all, I have seen how the AI Act or the subject of AI has triggered so much interest from legislators and other actors that it has mobilized the regulatory system in a way that we haven't seen before, I think. Why? Because what we have seen today is an AI Act that is structured in a very specific architecture. It's supposed to be hard law, it is called a regulation, but it also embeds pieces of soft law, standardization more precisely, guidelines, code of conducts that companies are invited to do, codes of practice, and all these things are somehow in the AI Act. So it's not only hard rules. So the governance model is absolutely fascinating. Also, the actors involved in that governance model. Of course, we have the European Commission as the main driver of the legislation and the main actor that needs to modify it in a way, but the European Commission is also helped by advisory forums, an AI office, and other technical committees that will help to implement, to understand and bring in the latest advancements of science and technology into the legal machinery. And with that, the AI Act is supposed to evolve as fast or not, or fast enough to have AI developments alongside with it.
So your concern is that it can develop in many directions, or just to understand you precisely?
Well, my concern is that this new architecture and governance model, it's very new. We haven't seen it before. We have seen subjects and areas in which there is a regulation and perhaps an agency, regulatory agency in charge of this. Here we don't have a regulatory agency, which would have been my wish, but we have other bodies, new bodies that never existed before, which are not entirely regulatory bodies, but they are embedded. We don't know how it will play out at the end. It is an experiment. It's an experimental governance framework. It's an experimental way of organizing how products will need to come into the market. Of course, we have some experience with product market legislation. It is not entirely new, but it is novel. My concern is that the implementation will take time because all the actors, including regulators, market surveillance authorities, notified bodies, and providers and deployers themselves, they need to understand how they have to work, what they have to do. This might not be so obvious because the legislation is not a recipe, but each member state has to contribute to make it easier for them to comply, and at the same time, they have to give the necessary guarantees for the society and the environment, because now the environment is also part of the AI Act in a way, to be protected, not to harm fundamental rights, not to harm further social and labor rights, and so on and so forth.
What do you believe should be the responsible use of AI systems when it comes to engineers and developers?
Engineers and developers do have a professional responsibility indeed. They need to perhaps be mindful that there must be a Hippocratic oath, just like doctors have it when they have to cure people. Because when they will develop or work with AI systems that can really impact real humans, living organisms, they need to be aware that these AI systems can impact those humans in a profound way. And because of that, engineers and developers need to have a high level of professional morale, if you like, or professional ethics, if you like, and think about qualities such as prudence, protection, precaution, and prevention, and see how, in a way, they can infuse them while developing these AI systems or any other type of similar technologies.
What advice would you give to STEM professionals and engineers, knowing the EU Act is about to be put to work?
So, looking at how the AI Act has been crafted and how it will be implemented, my advice to engineers will be to have and construct a foresight capacity. Foresight entitling having a long perspective in time, so thinking about the future, but in long term, more than 10 years, from 10 to 20 years, but also having the capacity to scan the horizon and see where will the AI systems that they are involved in or that they are developing will have an impact. In which areas of society, whether it be environment, social, education, government, public affairs, in which way these AI systems will have consequences that can be both positive or negative, doesn't matter. But how will this consequence will play, and what will be the consequences around the whole world. Here I would like to recall what we just learned a few weeks ago, really, when the World Economic Forum issued the annual report on global risks, 2024, of course, and the previous risks report, where the major risks that we saw were related to cybersecurity and to the environment and climate change. And this year, AI technologies, risks related to AI technologies, or risk related to AI incidents, were also very high. So that gives us an idea that we need to pay attention. So this is the type of foresight perspective, long-term view, and step back to see the whole implications as a whole, not just having a silo view. Because what often kills us, STEM professionals, or engineers, or lawyers, or social scientists, is that we have a very silo view of how we see the world and of our consequences, where we need to expand and enlarge our views and see everything from a very long distance. This is one advice that I would like to say. The other one is that they would need to cultivate a more societal or social chip or to increase that area that, well, maybe social aspects are also interesting to take into account when we're developing or when we're working with AI. And the third one will be that they should not forget that when we're talking about technologies or we're talking about AI, it's not just one single area. It's not just one single technology. It's what it fascinates me. It's the convergence of technologies where AI can work a lot with biology and with chips, semiconductors, and then you will have a fantastic invention or development in order to have better solutions for Parkinson's disease, for neurological diseases. I mean, everything packed in one process, in one development. The convergence between neuroscience, nanotechnology, AI, and other science is what fascinates me. And this is often forgotten. So having this in mind is also very important for me to advise to them.
Thank you. So Ane represents engineering organizations across the Nordics. So I would love to talk about the role of social partners. First of all, how do you see the EU AI Act impacting social partners?
The AI Act, it does impact social partners because it mentions them somehow in the regulation. It's still not written in stone, and some legal refinements have to be made to the legal text, but it says that social partners need to be involved, at least in the advisory aspect of the AI Act. I think that if the article remains, social partners can be and can have a seat in the advisory forum that is attached somehow to the oversight of the implementation of the AI Act. It's still very early to know how they're going to be involved and in what terms, but they will naturally have a role. But also, the AI Act will have other opportunities in which social partners can have a say. For example, there is a new area on AI literacy, building AI literacy and enabling it. And naturally, this is very important for social partners, and providers of AI systems are obliged to enable AI literacy to their staff. And since this happens in workplaces and social partners are there, I assume that providers will have to rely on social partners to be conductors of AI literacy in the workplaces and at national level too. When also social partners can play a meaningful role when it comes to identifying possible high-risk AI systems. Not all systems will be high risk, but some systems can be deemed minimal or with low risks. But when working with the technology, workers or representatives or the employers themselves can notice that maybe this AI system should be notified and should be deemed with a high risk. So they could also help in this. A very important aspect for me, whether it's not really mentioned in the AI Act as such, but it's somehow embedded, is in one of the legal obligations, is the obligation to conduct risk assessment of high-risk AI systems. And we know that at least trade unions and workers' representatives are very good at conducting workers' representatives. This can be also a way in which social partners can cooperate. And the second aspect in the AI Act is just collective agreements. I think that probably the AI Act will be a leverage for social partners in the Nordic countries or outside the Nordic countries to improve collective agreements, to modify them or update them, or to make new if it doesn't happen, if there are no collective agreements at all.
What actions do you think unions can take, both to safeguard but also advise their members in this implementation phase of the EU's AI Act?
Unions can play a lot within the framework of the AI Act. First, by understanding that there is an AI Act that applies to everyone in Europe, and that there are some systems that can produce high risks, that they are subject of the regulation, that there are systems that are out of the regulation but with certain exemptions, and that there are systems that are or that have limited or minimal risk. So unions have to have this type of vision of what is prohibited and should not be in a workplace, what needs to have a certain follow-up, what needs to comply with the legal obligations, and what has limited risks. In order for the legal obligations to be operationalized, the AI Act foresees standardization. Unions can be part of the national standardization bodies and be in the standard making, but at the workplace they can also observe and do what they have been doing for years: prevention policies, risk assessment policies. We have also the fundamental rights impact assessment. Somehow we still have a big question marks on how will they play, but they could have a role there. And also data protection impacts assessment, so they can have a lot of role. Implementing the AI Act will require it to see in a company whether a certain AI system poses high risks or not. This will be deemed to the provider or to the deployer. But also unions could have a role there, even if they are not mentioned in the AI Act. It can be a self initiative from trade unions to be much more involved in how the employer or the deployer of a specific AI system is qualifying the AI system. So that will be very interesting. There will be advisory forums and scientific committees supporting the AI office and the European Commission. Well, unions, if they are not sitting there physically, they can also perhaps be more present. The Commission normally says that the stakeholders that need to be there have to be involved, but it doesn't say which stakeholders and how. But this is an open door for trade unions and workers' representatives to enter and to get on the train at the right time in the implementation of the AI Act. So even though the AI Act doesn't necessarily define a role for trade unions, for workers' representatives, for social partners, there is a lot of range for maneuvers for these actors to help into the implementation and to be part of this new governance of AI as such.
Thank you. That was really enlightening, and it's been a true pleasure interviewing you. Do you have any additional comments you would like to add?
Thank you for the interview. It's been a pleasure for me too.